Are you using too much force, or are you looking for areas to remove friction? This is a recent mental model that I became aware of that will help builders think differently in their everyday business. Welcome to the Inspired Builders Podcast, your source for game-changing conversations with Australia and New Zealand's leading builders and industry experts. Each week, we deliver real stories and proven strategies from those who've been in your shoes. Ready to build something remarkable? Let's dive in. You know one thing that inspires me every week? Can you guess?
Helping builders, riding your bike,
Yeah.
learning new things.
Yeah, but no, one thing specifically is catching up with our team on Mondays.
Oh, yeah.
Where we go down to the coffee shop. And one thing for the audience that don't know, so each week we catch up for a coffee at around 10:30, and the whole team is there, and we just go over the wins from the previous week. And it's really cool because it's cool to see the whole team light up
Yeah.
and go, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. I think that is very, very true. And just being there, seeing it, and very important because there's multiple parts to this team and multiple people doing different things. And so someone over here doing X doesn't necessarily hear about the successes happening with this person over here doing A.
Yeah, and they might be integrated as well, like interconnected.
They're all integrated,
somehow.
yeah.
So yeah, someone might be doing a part of the process, and they don't see the win or the success coming from that part, where another team member will see it.
Or like some of us who interact a lot more with the client, we're hearing their wins, their successes, and what they're stoked with, and what they're grateful for, and then it's that's really important that gets transferred and shared with the team that have been putting in a lot of the hard work behind the curtains. Yeah,
and I think just overall, I'm hearing a lot of wins from a lot of the builders we talk to, like early on now in 2025. So it's good. It's a good feeling. Like I'm excited. I can hear that excitement in those builders' like voices as well, and they're truly inspired.
Yeah.
And
one thing with as well, when you look at these builders, one thing I always like to analyze is, all right, all these builders that are getting winning, why? What is it? What's unique there, or what's consistent amongst them? What's trending amongst them? And then, that's also what this podcast is all about: sharing those insights.
Yeah.
But we've also got a really awesome person coming on the podcast pretty soon.
Not
today,
weeks.
but the next few weeks.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. And
I think it'll launch in March, early March. Yeah,
plan to launch March. Yeah, really excited. Had a catch up with him earlier this week, and live it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the topic of inspiration and so on, I was listening to a podcast the other day. It was, the mental model books that we love. Mm-hmm. It's like those red mental model books.
Yeah.
And I think it's called FS. Do you remember what it's called?
FS Mental Models.
Yeah. We'll post a link to those books. I think it's highly valuable for builders. It teaches you different mental models and different ways to think about different things. And
yeah, FS stands for Farnham Street.
Farnham Street, yeah. So, and so I was listening to their podcast the other day, and they were featuring this guy called Alfred Lin, and it was pretty inspiring to listen to this. And I think this guy worked at Zappos early on and other companies, like pretty big companies. And the podcast was, what it did was there was this one line that he said, and it made me think so much. And the line was, when you have a specific decision or you're trying to achieve something specific, you can either apply force or you can remove friction. So let's say there's a specific problem that comes up. You've got to deal with something. You can either apply force or remove friction.
What's the... maybe more detail, because I know when you first mentioned it to me, I was like, yeah, isn't that just two sides of the same coin? It's the same thing. It's moving towards a goal.
Yeah.
We need to get moving. We need to take action towards that goal.
It's interesting because then straight away, I wrote it down, applying force versus removing friction. And then I sent it to a little WhatsApp group that I've got with one of our really good Resi builder friends and commercial builder friend. And all of a sudden, like, we were talking about this topic and fleshing it out. And it was really interesting to just see like what came up in my mind, because I think a lot of times I try and force something, right? So if I want to achieve something, I'll go in and force it. Whereas, sometimes you can also apply the mental model called inversion. Like we had that podcast episode about inversion a few weeks ago, where Charlie Munger believes that, for you to achieve something, what are all the things that could go wrong for you to achieve that thing, and then just remove those things. And I believe that's heavily I guess in line with this episode today, and that's like removing friction. So yeah, there's like, what did you say? Like two sides to the coin. Yeah.
It's two sides to the same coin. My initial thoughts was was when you mentioned it isn't it just the same thing? I have to go and work and achieve this goal, and but I think when you and I chatted more about it and you broke it down, they work very well together, but it's important to differentiate them.
Yeah. I don't think it's one or the other. So it's not like flipping from I'm a person that heavily focused, I apply a lot of force with everything I do, and then I should switch more to removing friction. It's not that. It's about identifying the different things. So the way I understood this about like removing friction is something where you almost like build a system, okay, that'll keep working in the long run, in a way, right? So let's say, do you have any examples of like things where you might be applying force to it? Like build this. Let's make this real. Like I guess.
Let's go
relatable.
Very real for business.
Yeah.
For builders and their businesses.
Yeah.
Maybe to intro that. One example I once heard, went to listen to a guest speaker, and the guest speaker was, at that stage, he was the director or head of marketing for the Iconic. Everyone knows the Iconic. Either you or your partner buys stuff online, comes very quickly, same day if you're in the cities, and that was their big thing. So they were putting a lot into marketing, paying for a lot of advertising. It was very effective, but they were kind of reaching this cap, like they couldn't So anyone who's driven goes, how can I push this further? How can I make it more? And their approach was always more marketing, more content, more, which is important, and it's very important to. That needs to be fresh, needs to be powerful. But then, I can't remember what the trigger was, whether it was someone in his team or he came up with it, but he then discussed at this event, removing friction. So the major friction with online purchasing was, I'm going to buy it. I can't try it on. I'm going to buy it. It's not going to be the right fit, the wrong size. It doesn't look quite right for my body shape, whatever that may be. Now what do I do with it? I've now spent the money and it's a waste. Now I've got to sell it and I take a loss. So what they did was, I think one of the shoe company in the US may have done it before them.
Yeah, Zappos.
So
which was this is where this guy worked.
Okay, there you go. So introduced the idea of free returns.
Yeah.
But what I think Iconic has done really well is they've removed every bit of friction from it.
Yeah.
So that concept in itself is amazing.
Yeah.
I'll buy a product because I can send it back for free. But then those of you who've bought stuff from them over the last few years would know it comes in a bag that is resealable, and there's very clear instructions. 3 steps, print it out, put it back on, take it back to the post.
Yeah.
So that way, people now buy. What they found is it dramatically increased people putting more in their cart and checking out. And then because people are buying more, and then you just have this issue of being lazy, people weren't sending back all of their stuff. So they're just keeping it.
Yeah.
So that dramatically increased their sales because they removed the friction from the checkout.
One thing I love about this mental model, like once you kind of understand what it means, you will start thinking of all different areas in your business and even your client experience and go, oh, wow, I'm applying a lot of force in this way. Like let's say, for example, client selections, right? Yep. I'm applying a lot of force. Like I'm trying to follow up the whole time. Like what's happening, what's like a lot of force. Whereas you could go, and that's very much the short-term thing because you just want those selections for this project so that the project can
to get it signed off, to get it quoted, to get it, totally.
Whereas removing friction is you're looking at what are all the different ways that will slow this process down, not just in this current engagement, but also in future clients, and go, how can I remove as much friction there as possible? So it might be technology, it might be some sort of process, it might be instead of you sending them selections, they actually come in and they do the selections with you so you can talk. So again, it's like thinking, what are all the things that might stop? And I like the easiest, lowest hanging fruit right here, I believe for most builders, is to look at your whole client experience journey, right, from A to Z. So, for example, let's say they find out about you to the moment where you hand over keys, and then you just look at that whole process. Where are different friction points? So very early on, there might be friction points such as lack of trust. So
Right. I was going to say, let's focus on maybe client acquisition. So that let's go from the point of just before they find out about you
yeah.
to sign contract.
Yeah. Okay. So one point of friction might be they don't even know about you.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got to fix that. You've got to make them aware of you. And then what are all in the client acquisition phase, what are all the different things you need to do to remove as much friction as possible? So i.e. lack of trust.
Yep.
Like, is it easy for them to sign a contract? Like, is your contract, I don't know too much about contracts. All right. But let's just assume.
Sorry to jump in there.
Yeah.
I want to backtrack because you jumped into contracts. Building trust is big. So I would go, building trust is important. What friction is involved with them building trust with you? Is information to you easily accessible?
Yeah.
Can they consume it? And is it resonating with them?
Yeah.
Because you can give someone a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo jargon, blogs that are outdated, blogs that aren't even, blogs are great, but making sure it's relevant, so that they can build trust because if I'm going to go, especially for a lot of our builders, they want to build for busy professionals.
Yeah.
It's a very blanket approach, but very common.
Good example.
Yeah. That kind of person doesn't want to go shopping. They don't want to go and talk to 5 builders. That's painful. They want the first builder they speak to be the builder. So then take responsibility and be that builder. Yeah. Make it super easy for them and remove the friction.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're just focusing on trust, like there's a positive and a negative about this whole thing, this whole like apply force versus removing friction, because you can go so deep and you'll just never finish. It's an ongoing optimization thing. So that's why I say you've got to have a look at the lowest hanging fruit first in your business.
Yeah.
And it might be in the client acquisition phase. It might even be in the customer experience phase.
Yeah.
Where's it at?
Yeah.
But just staying on the topic of trust, for example, it's the friction of them trusting you or lack of trust to you. It's them with lack of trust in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's
can they make a good decision?
Yeah.
Maybe they've made bad decisions in the past and they don't trust themselves.
Yeah. And if it's like let's say it's a couple, do they trust each other with each other's decisions? Mm-hmm. So there's so many different areas of trust.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, as a builder, what can I put in place? And now we're talking about systems. What can I put in place to remove that friction, to build that trust?
Yeah.
Okay. So it might be your marketing collateral, like case studies, everything that we would normally talk about, but it could be other areas as well. It could be how you present the documents and everything that you give them, the prelim agreement, like everything, the whole process. Yeah. The thing is, like, we could spend like 3 days talking about this.
Yeah. We could spend 3 days talking about just
that client acquisition side.
Just trust.
Oh, just trust.
Yeah. But the other ones, you mentioned building trust is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
The other one I would say would be selections. That's a big friction point we hear. So there's lots of ideas around that.
There are things in there like where you go, okay, how do we remove friction? Well, you might just need to get a team member on that just focuses on that, like an interior designer or something.
Yeah, so you can, I've heard of guys that will outsource that. So they white label a designer, or they partner with an interior designer to help with selections, or they someone in their team has a passion for that, and they can just build out some simple frameworks, a checklist. Do you have a checklist? Can you give your client a checklist? One of our clients, I think, that does this extremely well, has a very clearly defined process in selections, and then creates very clear boundaries around selections. So it's not just, go choose what you want anywhere in the world and then come back and talk to me. But give me a guide of what you're looking at, and then I'll put you in touch with go talk to this guy at the tile shop. Go do this. Go do that.
Yeah.
The other one would be quoting. Quoting's a big, in the sales process. If you're taking too long to quote something, then you can lose momentum.
Yeah.
And then that person then becomes potentially disinterested. Shiny object. Shiny object can be another builder. It can be, you know what? Let's go on a holiday. Let's buy myself a toy. Let's whatever that may be. Let's park my money investment somewhere else. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think like another way, like I love always looking for bottlenecks in our business, for example, and then see, okay, like, should I be fixing this bottleneck, and what are the other consequences of fixing this bottleneck? Because sometimes if you fix a bottleneck, it'll create another bottleneck. That's just the law of bottlenecks, right? You can't ever just fix a bottleneck and now you've got no more bottlenecks. That's just the law. So yeah, it's almost like fixing these bottlenecks and then looking kind of like for the next one. I think, yeah, where this is very relevant for our builders is that, especially in that front end, like pre-construction, kind of like sales process, that's a good opportunity to look at like what are all the friction points there, because if you can make that real smooth, that will then it'll help everything else. Yeah. Did you have a good example of that? Because I
was going to put it on like a personal example.
Yeah.
So because I think this is something that should be across your life. Funny, I recorded a video this morning just about making right decisions. But when it comes to personal, a key thing, people think, I've got to wake up even earlier. I need to get more hours in my day, to do more, I got to have more meetings. And that all at certain times can be the right solution. But again, applying force versus, one's not right, one's not wrong. It's maybe case by case. But removing friction would be removing distractions. Removing, we talked about this, who are you around? We've all got that friend who you hang out with, you have a chat, and then what they raise just gets your head spinning on stuff that is so unnecessary or is a waste of energy, a waste of time, waste of thought. That's friction.
Yeah.
Or the friend that just sucks the energy from you. That's a big friction.
Yeah. So you can keep forcing that and force yourself to like, okay, no, I'm all good. And then you catch up with that friend again tomorrow, and that force just keeps going. Yeah. So again, just probably just bringing it back to builders with the pre-construction, like the sales. I mean, if we talk about marketing and sales, I know Kurt has always said this, like marketing and sales in advance. So where it comes to friction in your sales process, you've got to have a look at like, okay, what are some of the friction points in my sales process, like during that sales period? What are how can I fix that by putting in systems in place in the marketing side of things? So I like one idea, obviously we're talking about trust. If you can build as much trust as possible in the whole marketing phase, your sales, it's going to be easier. You'll have to apply less force. Because let's say you've got no marketing, someone just like, I don't know, sees your site signage and they start talking to you. Now you've got to force that trust. You've got to go, yeah, this is why you should trust me. I mean, you don't say it in those words, but there's a lot of force right there. Whereas like we'd like to educate our clients on, in your marketing, you have to almost become that expert. You've got to remove as much friction as possible from their minds.
Yeah, I mean, if you know of typical questions that are always coming up or concerns that come up, and you're having to try and answer those in your sales process, that can be very drawn out. And then you reach in these stumbling blocks, you're wondering why they're not going ahead or why they're not coming back to you or they're ghosting you. Or and it's often because there's something unanswered. There's something that they're unsure about. Most of our builders have been doing this for a long time, so you should have a good idea what they are.
Yeah.
Come chat to us. We hear from other builders. We can share that. But then answer those questions. Your marketing, again, sales in advance.
Yeah.
Why can't you deal with those concerns?
And it's going to be like, especially if you focus on a particular like area or kind of like niche, it's going to be a thing that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things where, and this is why for some reason in my mind, it's like removing friction equals creating systems, because that friction keeps coming up. So let's apply a system. Let's create a system to overcome that friction. It's going to be a fear. Like if let's say there's a fear, for example, fear of budget overruns.
Yeah.
That you're going to see that consistently in your market, for example.
Yeah.
Now, some builders, it's going to be a little bit different for all of them, depending on what they build, what they do. But
You can go
in your own business,
Yeah.
you'll see a trend.
And that's a good example there of that fear of budget blowing over. So if you can, in your marketing, be educating people on how you overcome that and how that's not a concern for your clients because you deal with it up front, doesn't happen. And then, even once they enter your sales process and they're busy interacting with you, can that be in another format? Maybe in a pre-recorded video, educating them again on dealing with that, or in a document that they can read so that you're not having to sit there and explain it to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I think we should do a part 2 of applying force versus removing friction.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing I want to leave our audience with today, something actionable that they can go take away with, is write this question down. Where am I applying force where I should be removing friction? And then ask that question to the people around you. So if you have a business partner or whoever, you could even, if you're good friends with your clients almost, you could ask them that. You're going to get some real good feedback there. And then also maybe just other builders that you network with and so on. Just go with each other. And it's like where lowest hanging fruit first. You're not going to fix this across the board.
Yeah.
Your business will halt because
I think the point of talking to a client is very good. A lot of our clients tell us that by the end of a project, they are actually really good friends with their clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Ask someone that you are about to finish with and the relationship's great, or you finished with them, and raise that question with them. Where, and maybe you start with, client acquisition. So between them becoming aware of you and signing contract, ask them, where did you feel that there was, maybe not use the word friction because people might think of tension. But think more of where did you feel like things were, the momentum slowed down, or there was an obstacle that was frustrating to move through or overcome, and see what they say.
Yeah, and just, I know you're saying like in client acquisition. I think that's definitely one definite focus point there that they should have a look at.
What's another one?
Sorry?
What is another one that you would?
I would suggest like for them just look at what's the lowest hanging fruit. Where's the biggest bottleneck? Where's the biggest thing right now? Again, like the sales side, you there's always going to be opportunity there. So I agree with you. Like builders should definitely have a look at that. But then in all areas of business, and removing friction might be getting an employee or installing a system or getting a team to do stuff for you or whatever.
Yeah.
You'll know when you look at that as a builder.
I feel like my brain's already firing on another episode on this.
All right.
Focusing purely on like one area and going very deep on that.
That's a good idea.
So that'll be part 2.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for the episode.
Thanks for that.